Hey, now we're cooking. Oh, where's all my stuff? Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Camera Life podcast. This is the Camera Life podcast, and this is the random photography show. Clearly, it's open mic night because we've already got someone in the hot seat, but we'll get to our guests in a moment. It's the 31st of March. It's invoice day, boss, by the way.
Oh, I've got no internet. Sorry, Greg.
Oh, yeah, funny that. We'll get to that too. So it's the 31st of March. This is actually episode 65 of the Camera Life podcast, coming to you live on YouTube. But you can go back and watch our whole back catalogue of 65 episodes. 65 now, plus all the random stuff that you've done.
Hey, sorry guys, do we have a link that we can send to everyone who's not currently listening?
Yeah.
If it's live, like can I send a link out right now live? Because that would be like Inception live within the live.
Yeah. Do it.
As in, do you mean to bring someone on the show or for them to watch the show?
Just to like tell everyone that if you want to hear me on this delightful Monday, because you wouldn't be doing anything else.
Yep, we can do that.
Where would we find the link? If we were not regular listeners, where would we find the link?
You go to YouTube and you type in the Camera Life podcast.
Right, there you go.
It should be at the top of your favourites, Matt. And yes, for everybody watching along at home and elsewhere, we are joined by Matt Krumins. G'day, Matt. It's good to have you back. It's been too long.
Well, yeah, has it though? I mean, I don't know. I don't think you've missed me that much, to be honest.
No, you'd be surprised. I mean, look at it. I get to work with a guy who sits on a beanbag in a van in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's calling the shots.
Cheers, Matt. With that, cheers. I have a beer. Matt's got a red wine.
Cheers.
Water.
It's Monday evening. Greg's got some water. I'm in a van.
Yep. I worked out that I was on this podcast about 15 minutes ago. Yep.
Yeah, me too.
While we're doing the what's everyone up to, I'll do some quick good evenings to the chat. Yeah, good evening, Philip. Philip Johnson, always early. Sorry we were late, Philip. We're 9 minutes late. We had some technical difficulties. Trying to get Starlink to work in the middle of Malakuta was tricky.
Trying to get Matt Krumins to work at any time of day is actually quite tricky. So, yeah.
Unless it's
Matt went through 6 microphones just to get on the show.
Yeah.
Paul says evening.
Hey, Paul.
Tim Siamas says Paul. Bruce Moyle,
Welcome
evening. Paul
Henderson, Bruce. Hey, Bruce.
Evening all.
Hey, Paul
Ian
Henderson.
Thompson. Paul Henderson, Ian Thompson, good evening. Yelena says Yelena is in, like, if you could see just up here, or if she puts her head down, you'll be able to see. She's currently on the bed of the van right now. Hang on, is she going to? No, she's not.
I thought you were talking about our listeners. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Kev Moore
like
says
looking like this,
from Tassie. Right? No, she's just there.
We should get like the random hand just dropped from the...
That's what I'm expecting. She mustn't be able to hear me.
Yeah.
And Digifrog Dave from Tassie also says hi. Wow, what a crew tonight. This is the crew. They must be here for you, man.
We have got the crew.
Oh, see, they obviously
there's the hand. Hello.
Hey, hand. It's like Cousin It. It's just like exactly. It's creepily going to give you a scratch on the head or something.
Although I must admit, poor Yelena is getting a glimpse of her potential future with watching Justin have what appears to her to be a one-way conversation. That's what the 40s and 50s have in store for you, mate.
No, I'm making her listen into this, but to get the extra viewership. YouTube needs it.
Can I say that someone today? I'm going to take this one thing. I'm going to run with it. But I had someone today say that I look like Ryan Gosling, and they asked me to tag them in case I could get them more followers. And I was like, I mean, maybe the non-screen ready Ryan, but hey, just throw it out there. If you want to get followers, apparently I'm your guy.
Yeah, that's cute, Matt, that you chose that story.
Yeah.
So Ryan, welcome to the Camera Life podcast. What movies are you working on, Ryan? It's great to have you on. You're actually the biggest guest we've had.
Yeah, next to Matt Krumins.
Exactly, both in name and currently insulation levels.
Nice.
Yeah. No, look, I was a
how are you, Matt?
It's been really busy. If you could see what's going on just outside of the frame of this camera, including like it is chaos. My life right now, I have got camera gear scattered through, I reckon, 3 rooms, but nothing but floors full of camera gear. I've been working nonstop. This has been my first night off for quite some time.
You joined us.
Well, it's not a night off anymore, is it? So thanks, guys.
Oh, look, it's open mic night. It's always a night off and open mic night.
Jeez, I feel like I need my sound effects for this.
I know, right?
For that.
Did you bring your deck with you?
I've got the whole thing, yeah.
No, God, please, no.
Yeah. I should.
I like
That's what I felt like. When my notification came through, that is exactly the sound effect that needed to happen.
All right,
I'll tell you how depressing that situation is, right? Greg, you know all about this. You've written an article about it. I had a little package right up on my doorstep from yours truly, and I thought, hey, I've got this great idea. I'm going to go and like do all these different things, really put things through their paces. I'm sure this will come to light shortly for everyone. And no, it got sent back today.
I know. It sucks having to send it back, doesn't it?
It does, especially when you really don't feel like you've had a chance to actually do anything. So, yeah.
And we are talking, of course, about the GFX100RF.
Yes.
That's
what I was going to say. I was like, so you had that in your hot little hands, Matt. You got it sent to you.
I got to take it on workshops. That's all that happened. I got to take it on workshops. I didn't get to do anything else with it.
Oh, right.
Yeah. And as you know, like workshops, you're not exactly doing, magic, are you? You're teaching other people.
And you're not exactly focusing on your own work anyway, are you? You're focusing on helping everyone else.
Yeah.
But exactly. I do feel I know enough. I feel like I know enough now. So,
all right, let's hear it. What is your
You're really cutting the punchline here, aren't we? This is going to be a very short episode,
I was like,
Greg.
hang on. No. Let's make the team wait. Let's make the team wait for it. So we're talking about, we've got 2 guys on here that have had their hands on with the new GFX100RF. 2 of the very few people in Australia that have actually used it and got to test it out. And they chop it up and talk about that camera later. So keep listening live or listening later.
No.
Because first we need to find out what Matt's been up to other than testing out that particular camera.
Yeah.
And I'm going to add to that one there, Justin. So, Greg, you are being quite flippant with this. I even read on Fuji rumors, which I do follow all the rumor sites quite closely because you never know what you're going to find.
Love it.
They posted a review in the last few days or something like that, saying that this photographer had reviewed the GFX RF, and this is someone who runs a website dedicated to Fuji, and even in their humble situation, they started out with, I haven't had the privilege of using this camera because I'm a mere mortal. And yet here you and I are gods, obviously, really? Having played with this. So let's not underestimate the privilege of playing with that equipment,
Yeah.
Well,
but,
maybe
to be fair though, the guy that runs those rumors, because he runs a few of them all at once. I don't know how he does it, but obviously the ad revenue is good. But if you spent less time bitching and whinging about stuff and how, we've got a rumor where, we've got this like leaking things, maybe Fuji would send him a camera every now and then.
This is true. Although if they just sent him the camera, maybe he wouldn't feel the need to try and find all the rumors. I mean,
yeah, it kind of breaks his whole facade, doesn't it? It breaks his whole act.
Does. Well, I do like the rumor thing. You can go any direction with it because even if you're wrong, you're like, whatever, who cares? Like I said it was a rumor,
And if he had the camera, he couldn't talk about it. That's the thing. So it's like he can't even if he sent a camera, rumors are done because he can't talk about it. Otherwise, he's broken some sort of NDA.
Yeah, unless it was DJI, because I think they deliberately go to the rumor sites and like send them like full res images and be like, you didn't get it from us. But months later, here we are. So
leak it out.
Yeah.
So this is the question I'd like to ask you both, because you guys have both done the reviewing unreleased cameras thing. How does that happen? Like, first of all, how do you end up getting into that situation where camera brands want to send you a camera? And then second of all,
first and foremost, you need a beard.
I'm trying, but hard.
No, maybe that's what's happening recently. I don't know.
And second of all, yeah. So how do you end up in that situation? And then also, how does it work? Like, what's the deal? Do they make you guys like leave your driver's license with them or something? Like, what's that? How does it unfold? But before you answer that, a couple of comments from Alex Kozas up from Bendigo. Can't believe we have Ryan Gosling on the pod. Spending
cool
$10
icon too. That's Pink Floyd's "Wish You Were Here."
Oh, I think that. Oh, yeah, it is too. I guess I actually think he means here spending 10 grand on a camera that has a fixed lens. That's when you know you've made it. Yeah, 10K.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that. But yeah, so how does it work? How do camera bands end up sending you guys cameras? What's the deal?
Relationship building. That's what I did.
Okay.
I can't speak for Matt because Matt's in a completely different class to me. Yes, I'm godlike, but we kind of all us gods bow down to people like Matt. I don't have the sort of qualifications, or the output of someone like Matt, but I focus my energies on community building. So I worked really hard to work with the other admins to build the Fujifilm Australia Facebook group. Mm-hmm. And through that built relationships with Fujifilm Australia. And then when I started writing for ShotKit, they were really keen to start sending gear to ShotKit, which they were doing anyway, but it was always, we're getting this camera for Greg. So I kind of developed a bit of a reputation that I was a Fuji guy without being an actual Fuji guy. Still waiting for the invitation. I built relationships with likes of Charlie, who we've met before, Neil Pash. Before Charlie, it was years ago, it was Leader Pros, who I also have known for a very long time and actually ran a business with during COVID. So it's just, for me, it's always been relationship building. And you know, I have writing skills, so I write reviews, buyer's guides, education pieces. So I've got that skill set, and I know how to use a camera. So that's how it comes to me. And so they'll contact ShotKit and say, here's the NDA, and we sign that off. And then a beautiful little Pelican case shows up with a nice silver Fuji badge on it and a couple of padlocks. And I get to work. Hey?
Were there two padlocks?
No, there was only one. Sorry, the bigger cases often have two.
Good, because I only sent one back.
Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah, that one only had one. You messaged me at some point saying, what's the passcode, didn't you?
Yeah, I didn't get it. I got given the box without the passcode, yeah. So I'm a half-trusted
what's it worth
reviewer.
So tell us about your experience in becoming godlike. Look,
I think we're overstating. I think probably at this point in time, the biggest claim to fame I've got is looking a little bit like a fat Ryan Gosling. I don't think that I've got the godlike status in photography at all. I think that what happens with photography is that it's actually a really, really, really small network of people. I think these brands look like they are obviously very big brands, but they look like these gigantic, faceless behemoths. But the reality actually is that they're quite small and they're quite insular. Like I worked at Olympus for a long time, and you would work with people across the business. You would meet with the people, the Japanese team and the Hong Kong team who were having a huge influence on what was going on here. I look at Fuji and I kind of, as I said, I look at a Fuji rumors site and there's, a big announcement from Fuji and here's the Japanese team up there, announcing it. I'm like, oh yeah, I've been to a whiskey bar with them, before. Like it's not as big of a network as what it looks, I think. And that doesn't mean it's not a big thing. It's just that the network's not that big. And once you have an into that network, I think that there's just this natural, if you're like a trustworthy person, I think that you can actually ask quite a lot of a brand. I think that there's obviously people who are ambassadors, so they obviously have a lot of access. But then, someone like myself, I'm not an ambassador for anyone. Like I don't have a sponsorship with anyone. I don't really want a sponsorship with anyone, to be perfectly honest. But there is an element of truth that comes out as well, I think. One thing I like about Fuji is they do actually ask your opinion, your real opinion about stuff. And I think they also do take it on board, which is, you wouldn't really expect. You'd sort of think a brand like that would be so, they'd have so much data from everywhere that they wouldn't really care about what an individual says. But actually, in my experience from the people I've spoken to who are Fuji ambassadors, it's actually not true. They do actually take on board a lot of things, even down to things like ergonomics and stuff. You're not talking about just firmware bits. So, I think
take a lot on.
Yeah. So I think it's relationships. As you say, it is relationships. You know, I run the Bright Festival. We've got a lot to do with Fuji. I've done Fuji projects before. I also think that there's an element, I don't know, I reckon the more excited you are about being a brand person, the less likely you are to ever encounter brand stuff. Because the reality is that if you give someone who's an absolute diehard fan a piece of new equipment that's not come out, the odds of them keeping their mouth shut are very, very slim. Yeah. Whereas if you're someone who's like a professional who goes, you know what, like, cool, don't get me wrong, awesome, excited, great gear, like seeing it, but it's not like kid at a birthday party. I think there's a little bit more, a different level of, I don't want to say respect, but like there's mutual respect there, you know, like, cool, great camera, very excited to see it, super excited to play with it, but I certainly wasn't, you know, if it came to me earlier, I think I got it like 10 minutes before it was announced or something, but
yeah, that was my fault, sorry.
No, but even then, like if I got it, you know, 2 weeks, a month before, it's just not something that's worth talking about. You know, it's something that you go, cool, actually, what a great experience, and you know, let's see how this plays out.
Yeah, I see it as a privilege, and you know, the Fuji rumors guy saying, you know, I'm a mere mortal. Well, yeah, okay, whatever, but eventually you're going to have access to buy it if it's something that's really for you. Let's not forget, we're not just getting privileged access to new gear and then no one else gets to touch it. It becomes commercially available. You know, we're just doing the groundwork so more people know about it. But I think, you know, it is a mutual respect thing, because you've got to respect the NDA and you've got to respect embargo dates and all that sort of thing. And they're there for a reason. You know, the brand's got to protect its assets. It's got to protect its patents, because, you know, everyone's keen to know what every other brand is doing. Like, you know, Canon wants to know what Nikon's doing. And I think, you know, smaller businesses, like I've never dealt with Canon, and maybe Justin, you can speak to this because you have dealt with Canon directly, not as an ambassador, but just as a known individual who uses their gear. You're trustworthy, you know.
And we made straps for them.
Yeah. Plus you did the two, what was it? The R5s, Mark IIs.
R5 and the R5 II. Yeah, we did. The limited edition straps for the launch. So we did have NDAs and pre-release information, just not much. I think there was more on the rumor sites than I knew. That's for sure.
Yeah. It is.
I do love that when you see things on the rumor site and you're like, oh, that's not true, but like, yep, okay, that's
yeah, I love it. I love seeing. Oh, you guys are so wrong.
Shut up and just watch it play out.
They go, oh, it's rumored to be this big and it's going to have this, and then the thing that I was talking last week with Justin about was that then people on socials are having arguments over the value and the capabilities of this supposed camera that no one still hasn't seen, you know. So I find it a really interesting process, and you know, but it is work. You know, it's not just like it's sent a camera for fun. I've got to test everything. You know, I've got to run around with it. And you know, the 100RF is easier to hide. Yes, it's a street camera. Well, I've used it as a street camera and for a bunch of other stuff too in my review, but it's easier to hide a camera like that. I just put a little bit of black tape over the Fujifilm GFX100RF label and went on my merry way. But when I got the GFX100S Mark II and that 500, that you were involved in that as well, Matt, another godlike performance, you know, running around testing that in a real environment without other photographers or people seeing it. Now that's a challenge, you know, especially in a city. Like if you live in the country, well, it's easy. You just disappear into the bush for a day.
Well, I'll be honest, if you're around the city with a 500mm lens, you probably deserve a bit of attention, you know.
Yeah, true. Yeah. you look a bit sus. You do look a bit sus. Yeah.
Yeah. What are you doing around the playground with that lens? It's
stay away from schools.
It's interesting. I actually had this conversation with while I was in Bright shooting a new bike that's yet to be released. I think it gets released next week, and we're at the Bright Trails shooting a mountain bike that's worth, you know, $20,000+. One of the main models, the most popular sort of high performance e-bike models on the market. Oh, maybe I've given too much away. Anyway, hopefully the rumors sites listen to this podcast for mountain bikes. Anyway, so they're testing it on the trails, and I said to Will, I was like, because like we're on the trails, there's guys there that are running the shuttles at Bright. These are like industry people. They know what's up, and they were straight away onto it. They were like, "Oh, is that the new?" And Will chatted to him about it, and Will said the way that he always approaches it is you can't keep it completely secret because it's not possible to test it and keep it secret. But he makes it so he'll chat to people about it, but he won't let them dig too deep.
Yeah,
and then
he'll shut them off.
Oh, not really. But if they're like, hey, what's this or what's that? Have they changed that? He'll be like, you'll have to wait for the review or whatever. But then if they go to take a photo, he's like, hey, no photos. That's not cool. But because obviously bikes are, you can't test a bike in secret really. Whereas I guess with cameras, people they're smaller and they're probably a little bit easier to disguise the fact that it's new model. They're not, whereas bikes are quite the styling. It's like a car, like if someone's into bikes, they'll see that it's a different shape or something like that, cotton onto it if they're into it. So I thought that was interesting. And I was thinking about the cameras because you've disguised them a little bit, but do you try and disguise them, Matt?
No, not at all.
Nice.
No, not because not in a disrespect to the brand kind of way, but I sort of figure that realistically, what are the odds of the average punter on the street, if you're in the city, for instance, what are the odds of somebody who cares enough about that brand happens to look at you, notice there's something different? Because cameras don't look that different either. If you pick up the GFX100RF or 100RF as an example, it doesn't look shockingly different to an X100 It's a little bigger, sure, but you have to really look at it, or it doesn't look that different to say like a black Leica or an old film camera, or you'd have to really be looking at it. And if someone's that close looking at it, you kind of know. And if they even saw it, you'd be like, cool. Like, you're not there to answer questions for them, are you? Like when you're taking photos, it's not a social environment generally. Whereas I can understand with bikes, you're waiting at the top, you're sitting in the van, getting the ride up the top. There's lots of social interaction points. Photography is not really like that, I don't think, on the whole. So I kind of look at it and go, if you had something that was really different, then people probably wouldn't even notice it because it's so different they wouldn't expect it. And if it's not that different, like most cameras that come out kind of look similar enough, it's like if someone notices, good on them, like no one, you don't have to spy that for you, It's, I always say this like on a workshop, I go, when we're doing portraiture in the city, people feel awkward about it, but if they go overseas, they don't. And the reason being is because they think in Melbourne that they're going to note it, they're going to be seen by someone, like people know who they are. And that's not true. There's like 6 million people in Melbourne and most of us don't know each other. So you could be from anywhere in the world when you walk past the person in the city. It's only when you open your mouth and tell them where you live. And so I think the same camera, like that, I think privacy, so just odds are it's not going to happen. And if it did, it'd be so unusual.
Although having said that, I did have the Fujifilm XF500 pre-production, and I didn't take it to BFOP. Anyone could imagine that. Probably not a good idea. That
and like the thing is, like, I would never take it on like a workshop, for instance, just because that would be a conversation starter because there's, a group of us, having a lot of time together. There are things like that you pay attention to, but I really don't think in the long run it's that big. If you're a sports photographer, important sports event, people are watching you. They're watching what you've got. They're watching what you use. If you're an average punter standing on the sidelines of your kid's, footy match, no one's watching that, and if they are, they're probably not looking at the camera. They're probably looking at how much I look like Ryan Gosling or something,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I'm gripping onto this today. It's like the one positive.
I think you should. I think you should hang on to it.
Take it and run with it. Sorry, I dropped out there for a second. Did you guys talk about Bruce Moll's comment here? Don't hang around a camera store and you should be fine.
No, we didn't.
Yeah,
we did not. But that's a very good point. Yeah.
Bruce, do you guys? Bruce works at a camera store in Brisbane, I think. Do you, Bruce?
No, Bruce is in Tasmania. Bruce is an amazing abstract portrait photographer in Tassie. He's got a studio. He runs video productions. What? He's an incredible photographer. Nothing to do with Brisbane or camera shops, as far as I know of.
Well, who is it that? Oh, I'm so back to front. It's someone else then. I'm
Bruce
getting
is
my
one of our
chats mixed up.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I met Bruce at BFOP, I'm sure.
Well, then who was it that works in a camera store that's in the chat? Crazy. Anyway, we'll find out soon. Anyway, I won't ask my question then. We'll see what happens.
We got a great comment we've got a great message here from Glenn. Back in the ye olden days, when I was a wee lad, we had a fake plastic Nikon F3 cover to go over the Hanimex 110 camera. Camera looked good, photos were shit. Oh,
there
Bruce
you
is
go.
confirmed. Sorry, Bruce. I don't know. Bruce says no camera shops for me. I don't know why I thought that. There must have been someone else in the chat a few months ago.
Can I say, out of all of us sitting in this room, Bruce would probably be the most well-known and famous of the photographers, and would by far have won more awards than anyone else in this entire shindig, at least that I can see in the chat /our3. Bruce is highly...
He has a killer beard too, so I think we're seeing a trend.
Well, now he'll know that I'm certainly not fangirling him or anything. I'm pretty oblivious to awards and stuff. I've never been in that world.
Rick works in the camera shop in Brisbane.
Oh, sorry, Rick. Sorry, Bruce. I got you mixed up.
Rick
That's life.
also has a beard.
Yeah, that must be it. Everyone has a beard except for me.
We're going to call you Peach Fuzz from now on.
You also work in a camera shop, Greg?
No.
Yeah.
No?
Never.
Sorry, Bruce.
Or something?
I walk into them a lot. I was in one this morning, and we'll get to that too.
I saw that. Yeah. That's exciting.
Well, I wouldn't get your hopes up just yet.
Well, I can tell you, I have also blown a huge amount of money in the last 24 hours on camera gear. So maybe we could have a commiseration ceremony together.
What did you buy?
So I just bought myself very broadly speaking, should we start with the cheapest item first?
Yeah, go for it.
So this is my latest cheap item. This is the Angel Bird CFX-A card reader, which was that was an exciting purchase. Been a long time in the coming, that one.
I've got the B version, the old, the big, yeah, because that's for Sony, I guess. Yes.
Yeah, this one is for the Sony. Yeah.
For the Sony.
Bruce has asked, I got an FX6, and I'll be honest, the FX6 is actually potentially on my shopping list, but it doesn't have image stabilization, which is annoying me. And I've got a bigger story about that soon. I bought a Rode blimp for my mic. I had a shoot yesterday where I was stuck in a very windy location with only a shotgun mic that did not have any kind of fairies except for a little foam coat. It did not go well, so I bought myself a blimp.
Nice.
These are my two small ones. I bought myself a big Pelican case. I have also invested in the Sigma 300 to 600 f4.
Oh,
and
no.
I am tossing up between the Sony A1 Mark II or just getting another A1 because, to be honest, they're kind of the same thing, and I can't really get on board with their little, thing. Yeah.
You can't see this comment. The Rhodes blimp is called a dead wombat.
It is, yeah. It's like the big fuzzy coat over it because like a little one's called a dead cat.
Yeah,
and it's like well, the blimp is so big it's called a dead wombat. Yeah.
Wow.
So so no, have been hitting the checkout buttons like crazy today in between all the bits and pieces. So. Yeah, what was your purchase? I'm interested in your purchase.
Now I'm feeling really anxious because
was it an
X100 really cool
GFX100RF?
Well, we have talked about that a lot, and I have said that I could see myself owning one or at least using one. But I've already checked, and I can't even get a. I used to be an alcoholic, so most of my organs are fucked. So I just can't afford it. So no, I didn't get the GFX. I am a Fuji fanboy, and typically my happy time is doing street photography. Anyone that follows my stuff will know that. And usually I shoot with my trusty but old Fujifilm X70. I love this camera. This one's still like brand new. And it's like a decade old now. But no, I went big today. I walked into DigiDirect in Melbourne. For those of you not in Australia, DigiDirect is a chain here in Australia, and I think New Zealand. They've got some stuff. They're just a camera retail store.
Please don't promote them. Let's not do that.
Okay.
They
looked after me.
Name them by name and then move on.
All right. We'll move forward. Anyway, I was looked after. I walked in, and I know the manager at the Melbourne store quite well. I have purchased many, many, many things from him in the past. Anyway, I walked into the store. I said, hey, I want your cheapest, dirtiest point and shoot digital camera.
No, God, please, no.
I did.
No.
But I want to tell you the backstory, Matt. You see,
I don't know if I could handle it.
No, trust me. There's method to my madness. Well, at least it makes sense to me. So basically, Matt, I'm a street photographer, right? And I am a little over all of these people fighting and arguing over how good a piece of gear is. Oh, but you can't shoot weddings with that because it's only got this f4, and you can't do this with that because it's, I need IBIS, otherwise it's completely useless. The amount of times I saw that comment about the Fujifilm GFX100RF.
We should talk about that. Yeah.
We will come back to that because look, there's arguments on both sides, but for what I do, wasn't an issue, right? I didn't need, I mostly shoot in f8, and I don't need IBIS, because I know how to actually use my exposure triangle to fucking get us a clean, sharp image, even with a medium format sensor that's absorbing everything that's going on in front of me. And I can see that Matt is so wanting to argue, but
this is gonna be fun.
I'm not.
But
I'm just.
I went to the store and I said, "Give me your dirtiest, cheapest camera, so I can shoot some street photography. It just has to have autofocus and
autofocus. What do you need autofocus for?
What do you need that?
Anyway, and I went and got myself.
Pixel.
Can't do weddings without manual focus.
Can't do weddings. I went and got myself an Ilford, which is probably just a factory-made camera that they put this logo on, different logos on every one.
Can I just say, if I knew the credibility of this podcast had gone this low, I would not have joined tonight.
Hey, listen, Junior. It's got an LCD. It is plastic fantastic. It weighs about probably 40 grams, and he only charged me $60. I think it's about between 100 150 on other stores. But I bought a $60 camera and I went and shot some street with it straight away. I put the battery in. Well, actually, he did it for me. He put the battery in. He gave me a spare micro SD card because I didn't have any micro SD. It only takes micro.
It takes micro natively. That's the SD card that goes in.
32 gig max card. That's all I can do. But with this camera, that's like 8,000 photos, right?
So hang on,
24 megapixel. Well, it's 24, but it's a small sensor though. It's like
but it's 24.
It doesn't have a sensor.
All right. Let's bring up
Ilford don't make sense.
No,
there must be film in there. It takes that microfilm. Remember in the library, like the microfiche stuff? It takes that. It's not a micro SD, Greg. It's microfilm.
All right.
I'm not saying.
I'll mute you both in a second. Let's go to my photos. Where are they?
Oh, hang on. I'll take Bruce Moyle's comment off. He said he bought the Fujifilm keyring.
No, I did get some Fujifilm, enamel pins. Let's.
I do love the pins.
So this is the very first shot I took with this camera. I walked out of DigiDirect. That orange on the left there is the wall of DigiDirect. Anyone who's been there will know. I'm sorry, it's not a bigger view. I don't really know how to make it bigger. Sorry.
It doesn't look. To be honest, I wouldn't blow it up too big because you probably won't. You'll start seeing the pixels.
Well, you can in some of the you can actually see pixels. And that's fine.
Now, Greg, tell me, was this shot in RAW or JPEG, and have you post-processed it, or is it straight out of the camera?
It only shoots JPEG. It only shoots JPEG. No. I've applied my own Lightroom presets to this.
Okay. To a JPEG. All right, we're going there. Yeah,
why not?
All right.
Bruce says it's GIF.
You guys are all bastards. There's a word I want to use here, and I'm not allowed to.
We should genuinely, seriously, Bruce, if you could join this chat right now, that'd be amazing, because I think we need some support.
Yeah, I know.
No, you don't. I'm going to mute both of you. Hang on a second. I can't talk with you guys talking. I'm going to turn you both off. There we go. All right, everybody. If you want a discount on your Lucky Straps, just use the code GREG. It's GREG, and you'll now get 20% off your strap. No, we'll get you 10. We'll get you 10. Anyway, my photos. So I played around with color. I played around with different scenarios.
I think you need either.
Hang on.
One.
You think
I was going to say, so the motion blur there. So were you shooting in manual? What mode were you shooting in?
No. It doesn't have modes, Justin. It's just a point and shoot.
The camera fucked it up, basically, and now it's art.
I was like, yeah.
It doesn't like low light at
shot.
all. It doesn't like low
I like
light.
it. There's a bit of blur. There's a bit of sharpness.
10 o'clock in the morning. It wasn't dark. It was a nice, bright, sunny Melbourne day. Oh, look, everybody. Elena can change the discount code to 20% for my listeners.
Wow.
Don't do it, Elena. Hey, you're
Justin's
right. I can
math.
reach you. I can.
Yeah, he can slap you from there. Give you a smack.
No, not quite. I can throw something up there.
So I just played around with it.
Oh,
Can we be honest for a second here, right?
These are good
Don't get me
photos.
wrong. Go back a shot. Go back one. No,
Yeah.
not that one. The other way. Two back.
That one.
That to me, that is a no, not that one. That's terrible.
Not
Keep
that
going.
one. Not that one.
No, the other one.
Way.
The one with the guy with the glasses. I think we all know
Oh
what
my
we're
God,
talking
make up your mind.
This
This
one.
guy,
This
all
one.
right.
This one. This one.
So from a photo perspective, like that is a very clever composition, and this is a great example of showing the photographer, not the camera.
Yes.
But what I want to point out here is that there's got to, I feel like, and this is something that's going to play into this little, if we get to it, the GFX RF conversation a little bit. There's got to be an element of deliberateness in shots. And I feel as though what is happening at the moment, because this is what you're doing now, you are actually quite late to a terrible trend of buying shitty old point and shoot cameras.
But I've never done it.
All I can say is I hope you're on TikTok because it's a big thing. But like,
Greg's about to go viral.
I think the problem with this is that you've no doubt within this, obviously you've caught some really, really great shots, but I can't help but think that those occasional great shots maybe were not 100% the work of the photographer. They're the work of a little bit of luck and a little bit of the great, the camera performed and I sort of knew what I was doing. I don't feel like it's a very deliberate pursuit. And that's where I feel like photography can lose its way a bit, is when you get great shots, but there's an element of fluke or luck in it, I can't help but go, yeah, aren't we back into to phone photography territory? Because realistically, yeah, and that's where I sort of go, are we cheapening it by going like these old amazing pieces of digital, like back then they were crap, they're crap now. Why not? Do you not have to embrace the best tech? But I feel like there's a whole generation of people going low tech for the sake of going low tech. It's almost like saying I'm too cool to write on a computer. I actually type emails on my typewriter, and it's like the communication.
There's a quill and ink.
You know, like.
Okay.
Look,
So the question is, I guess, Greg, is do you think you caught anything? Like, obviously, you've been able to make some great photos with this camera, so sort of maybe working through its limitations or whatever. But do you think you captured anything that you couldn't have got with your Fujifilm your X70?
That wasn't the exercise.
I'm not sure the X70 does like 2 megapixels.
Yeah, the X70 is 16.
Yeah. So it was more an exercise in like, hey, don't let the camera hold you back, as opposed to an exercise of you should use a camera with more limitations because it'll push your creativity.
Well, you know that's something that I spruik anyway. I spruik people, because Matt, one of the things I noticed when I was at BFOP doing workshops is that people who appeared to be seasoned photographers, obviously a lot of retirees were there. Well, not a lot, but there was a decent chunk of white-haired people there, and what I found was that people were going up to the instructor with holding, like a $10,000 to $15,000 camera and lens combo, asking what ISO they should dial it in. And I think that sometimes we lose sight of what photography is. Photography is about image making, and there was no bravery to just shoot at whatever ISO they thought was right. And they can look at the results, for God's sake. It's not like it's film where you put in a 1600 ISO film and in actual fact you should have put a 400. You can take the shot again and within 3 seconds change the ISO. But there was this lack of bravery. And I think for me what this was, And I had such an inspiring day because I shot a bunch of stuff on my X70 as well that I'm really happy with. But for me, buying this little piece of junk wasn't about the image making. Well, it was about the image making, but it was about the image making and the process of making images. It wasn't about what the end results were. It wasn't about this podcast. It wasn't about necessarily sharing them with people. The byproduct of my exercise is that I feel like I can say, well, yeah, okay, so the dynamic range is crap and it's grainy as hell, and there's like 100 missing pixels just in the bottom left corner, and all that sort of stuff. But I enjoyed the process. I went out and connected with my craft and loved the experience. The photos, I barely look at the screen, even on my X70, unless I use the screen to compose because it doesn't have an EVF. So for me, it was about, this exercise wasn't about, look how great my images are with a $60 camera. It was about, look at the experience I can have without worrying about gear.
Can I ask a different question then? Because I can see also Rick's got a question in there and asking, about basically, if you learned the response time of the camera, etc., which makes a lot of sense. If you learned about the camera enough, does that reduce the luck aspect of it? I definitely think, yeah, of course it does. Like that's a really good point.
Yeah.
If you learn the limitations of something, you work around the limitations. Of course, that's mastery of that particular piece of gear. Yeah. So no arguments there at all. But my question here is that surely pulling your phone out of your pocket with a camera that has also got no settings and a full depth of field, and it has a few zoom levels and stuff. If we're talking image quality is obviously not an issue. Why is buying a new piece of equipment any different to just using your phone, however crappy it is? Because that is a strip down of that's no gear, that's no outlay. Yeah. And it arguably probably has less settings on it than what the $60
yeah, and it would handle it better. It would take better pictures. Yeah. It would handle low light better. It has greater dynamic range. It's faster. This photo here that we're looking at here. Yeah. So this guy, I pressed the shutter button when he was at that window on the left.
Yeah,
that's how slow this. So I had to work out. Yeah, I had to work out a bit of timing, and that was just part of the fun. Some shots worked, some shots didn't. If they didn't work, well, so be it. I'll try again tomorrow. For me, it was about that experience. It was about, and yes, I could have just pulled out my phone, but why do we buy anything if that's the case? Why do we buy? You've just said you've gone and bought a whole bunch of expensive things today. A new Zoom, and granted, you need that for your job, but I need this sort of stuff for my mental health. I need to get out on the streets, and if it costs me $60 and it inspires me to spend I was in that city for 6 hours today, not just shooting with this because the battery only lasted 45 minutes, but shooting with my X70. Like, I had such a great day. I was so engaged in the process and hunting light. And if this got me out the door and saved me from spending another day sitting on the couch feeling depressed, then that's a worthwhile expense.
No arguments there. Like, there's obviously no arguments when it comes to your personal enjoyment of it. I think where I probably come from with my perspective on this is not maybe from what you're doing, but there is an actual resurgence in those cameras. So if you look past what you've made a decision on, if you go onto TikTok and look at like old shit digital cameras, there is like this huge, it's like when film started to come back and it became cool.
Yeah.
And the amount of people I see buying these really old, like what would have been at the time very expensive, but these days should be worth absolutely nothing, but they're really expensive again, a lot of them. Like, there's a lot of those more vintage, like well-known models, and they're coming back. And what I feel as though is like the type of content that's being created. And I've actually got something like this, again, I know this probably sounds like a mystery to a lot of people who are listening in already, but this actually does really come back to my experience with the GFX camera, ironically, because you're talking about the world's greatest version of what you've just got in your hands. And now, versus what is probably one of the world's crappiest versions you could buy. And it really strikes me as this, it's really difficult to reconcile the way that, I agree, we put too much emphasis on camera gear. And if you need a particular feature, yes, that'll cost money. But if you don't need the features, it doesn't, sure. But I'm also feeling as though there's a lot of haphazard photography these days that is statistics-based. You shoot enough frames, you'll get a great one. And then if only everyone sees the great one, that sets up this pretense for like, oh, I bought this old terrible camera and look how amazing it is. And actually, you've got a lot of experience. You're a good photographer to start with, but equally it might be the 1 in 1,000 images, but that's not how it's presented. And I think that can be,
for sure,
individuals' mental health. I feel like that can be, as an industry, bad for everyone else's mental health, because what they see is themselves failing 1,000 times that they didn't get the shot. But what they don't know is it also took 1,001 times for you.
Yeah.
So you're worried that people. You're worried that people would see. So if Greg put that image up, that great shot of that, he was in the framed in a beautiful spot, had a nice color to the side, leading lines, and he puts that up and says shot with this camera, and someone's going to look at it and go, okay, I need to buy that camera so I can shoot like that style of image. Yeah. And whereas for Greg, it wasn't the sensor, it was none of that. For Greg, it was just whatever inspired him to get out that day and get that shot, which happened to be a $60 camera, but it could have been It also could have been the GFX.
Yeah,
or it could be.
So to say that I need to go out and buy a $60 camera every time I feel a little flat and I want to do some photos. It was a culmination of things, Matt. It was that, yes, for my mental health, my photography has always been a part of my therapy. It has been since I took it up, and I wanted to have fun. I felt a bit cheeky. I walked into the store and said, Mark, I just want your shittest camera. And he goes, oh, I can give you this for $60. I said, done.
He said, let me walk you over to the Nikon area. And you were like, no. And I wanted, I'm kidding. Julie, I love you. No. I'm sorry.
Although he did walk me past the Leica case, and I was very angry about that. So, that's what I really want.
No, it was not your worst value for money. Not the worst value for money camera, just your shittest camera overall.
Oh yeah,
but I think that's the thing is there is a really big. I guess that you're making the point is actually the exact same point as what I'm saying. But I think that because you've attached your point to a particular camera, I think I've got an issue with it. Your point is that the camera doesn't make the photo, and I totally agree with you. And the purpose of photography is not always about the photo. Totally agree with you. I think what I find frustrating, and I think the GFX is actually that's what's getting to me this week, is that I've seen so many promotional photos that people have shot. These cameras they've been handed through all the influencer hands the last month or two to shoot promo images, which is very normal, by the way. But when I look at those photos, what I find really starkly, glaringly, in my face, is that very, very few, if any, of the photographs that I've seen shot on that camera take advantage of any of the technology in that camera.
Yeah.
And that's what really interests me, is that all of a sudden I've got this whole generation of, not a generation, but a group of people, this following of photography that's using what is perhaps one of the greatest masterpieces of all time in terms of the camera build. And they're taking shots that I could shoot on an iPhone with it and saying that because it looks artistic, suddenly it's a medium format GFX image. And it's like, I'm not convinced. I feel like that you could shoot that on a $1,000 camera, yet you're spruiking an $8,000 camera. Show me why it's worth $8,000. Don't show me why you're cool because your friends dress in retro clothes. It's a totally different thing, and I think that's why it's getting my back up this week, is because I went into this experience with this camera expecting something else. And I feel like all I've been fed so far is all the reasons why I probably wouldn't buy it. I've not been shown a reason why.
Let's get into that. What were you expecting with the GFX?
Wait. Before we get to the
you're still here, are you? Sorry.
The podcast. Sorry, I'm still here. Starlink's been going in and out. I want to do a quick roundup of a couple of comments that have been coming in before we get into the fun part of this episode. Paul says, I'm with Greg on this one. Tim Siama says, if you have fun creating Greg, then it was a worthwhile exercise. I agree. I think it was a good exercise.
It was fun.
I'm excited about this. And then when you sent the photos, it was like, you got some good shots. And I think there's a good article in there. Is that the plan? Like an article, a bit of a talk about?
No, I'll just put it on my own blog. I'll just talk about, why what I've just said to you guys, and I've said this on the podcast countless times, Justin, that, I've been in a photography funk. I've had some ongoing mental health issues that have kind of flared up at the end of last year, and it's made it hard to get back into feeling like going out and taking photos. The GFX inspired me a little. and it kind of got me back into the vibe a bit because I take my own product shots, Matt, for my articles and all that sort of stuff. And then this idea popped into my head after reading countless comments about the GFX, the new GFX, and what it is and what it isn't, and why it's useless, and why it's amazing, all this stuff. And I thought, you know what, I just want to go back to let's just do something that's just about image making, and it's about the experience, it's about the joy of photography, and and so I think that's what I'll do. I'll just do an article. It'll be very raw and very exposing about why I do these things, because I think that helps other people. Part of what I do on my personal blog is talk about my mental health challenges and how I use photography to support them and to deal with what I'm going through in life. And I think it helps other people when they read that sort of stuff. It can't all be, here's a new camera, it's glorious, here's the, like, it has to be real, and that's what I do on my personal stuff. But yeah.
Well, I love it. And when that article comes out, we'll try and remember to link it below if you're listening back to this later.
Yeah.
Otherwise, just go to Greg's blog. What else we got here? Rick Nelson, who works in a camera store in Brisbane and is not Bruce Moyle. Rick Nelson, a customer told me the answer to just that. The phone looks too good. They want the retro look of the tiny sensors. So Rick's getting the people coming in looking for the old cameras.
You know what, Rick? Can I say, I don't know if you've seen it, Rick, in your store, or whether they're starting to sell these in actual stores, but I saw a thing on Facebook the other day, and it was like this little pancake lens. They were advertising for full-frame Sony cameras. So the one
that looks like an Oreo?
Yeah, I saw that little thing. It's like F11.
Why are you spending $9,000 on a Sony A9 Mark III and then putting an Oreo on the front of it? Like, don't get me wrong, all respect, if you want that look of your photo, but go and buy the shit camera that Greg bought. Don't try and turn your other thing into like, it's almost, I feel like it's almost a bit disrespectful to the people who developed that camera.
Well, yeah, it's an interesting. What? Someone put a cookie on the front of a camera?
Seriously, like, if you want the retro look, go for it. But like, it's just feels like the wrong way around,
And look, if you do like that look, then go and buy yourself a Fujifilm and just shoot RAWs, JPEGs, and apply a color sim and be happy with it. Like, and that's part of the reason why I shoot Fuji, is because I do like that simplicity of applying the colors to. I shoot RAW, but it's just it's part of my workflow. I'm not selling billboards. I'm not selling to commercial people. The most important element of my photography is doing product shots for my reviews. Like,
now that you're shooting with trendy cameras, you'll probably get picked up by a creative director to shoot a billboard. Next comment.
Ilford, I'm ready for a sponsorship. Ilford or whatever Chinese factory made this, I'm ready for a sponsorship.
Gosh.
Bruce Moyle, who does not work in a camera store.
No, he doesn't. We've established.
Using here is fun if there's no pressure to perform with it. Yeah, I think that's it. Nev says, it's funny, I use the GFX and after a 6-hour wedding shoot, I can't touch it. Yeah. As an addictions counselor, I understand why our mental health is far more important. Yeah. Very good. Lots of other comments coming in. A lot of Oreo lens hate.
Good. I'm glad we're on the same page with that. Yeah.
Yes, the dispo lens thing. I've seen it. It's silly.
You know what they tried to push with this? They tried to say that they were recycling old disposable camera lenses, so it was like a good eco thing. But I can't help but think that there must be so much more input in rebuilding a lens around a tiny piece of plastic you recycled than what it would have been to throw and how many exist out there? Probably not many. Like, that is, like, we're not talking about turtles choking on these things. These are not straws.
I think they do. The turtles have been eating disposable cameras.
The turtles are going around with bifocals. They've swum into 2 of them, and now they can see really clearly. Like,
people are eating their turtle soup and spitting them out.
Just
too much.
We're fixing the environment. What's it called? Greenwashing or something? What's it called?
But isn't that greenwashing?
Yeah, it is greenwashing.
Yeah. But that's just it. It just feels like there's a lot of that. That happening there.
Yeah, definitely. Most definitely. Where are we up to, boss?
Well, I think, I mean, we've kept Matt on here for an hour when he was supposed to have the night off. So I think we probably need to talk about what was promised, which is the thoughts on the GFX100RF. So I like to call this segment Matt versus Greg.
Why? Why is it versus?
I think it would be versus. Like, let's just run with it.
All right. Let's hear what you got to say, old man.
I got to say, so this is where I feel like I probably won't be sent another camera in the future. It's no, it's not. I'm not negative like that. But I do think that there is something that's really, really interesting about this, and I've had lots of discussions over the last week. I have taken this camera out now, as I said, on lots of workshops and shoots, not things that have been just for my own fun. So I haven't actually gone out and like fallen in love with it. I've had it with me when I've been doing things. Yeah. So that's probably an important distinction as well, right? But I can't help but think that this is a camera where for every pro that I can think of, there's an equal con that makes me negate the pro completely. There's almost no one aspect of this camera where I think, wow, that's an incredible thing that I can't do without. And I'll give you an example here that really kind of almost annoys me that we're all really excited about this aspect ratio switch on it that's got like little, different aspect ratios. And don't get me wrong, it was probably one of the most fun parts of the camera. Like I really enjoyed, it's like, what is it, 64 by 24 or something like that, 68 by 24 ratio, like that.
Like old X-Pan, yeah.
Yeah. And I said to a friend of mine, if that camera only shot that aspect ratio raw and there was no weird crop thing about it, it was only shot that, I'd probably buy it for the price. But the reality is that I look back and think to my days at Olympus OM Systems now, and they've had aspect ratio switching in their cameras since day dot. Now, maybe not the exact crops that are being talked about in this Fuji system, but the concept is not different. The idea of blacking out portions of your frame to change aspect ratios is not new. This one happens to have a physical dial, but it's also a very clunky physical dial in a spot that's actually really hard to kind of change whilst you're looking. And so I was sort of going, you've got this really high res camera, love that, 102 megapixels, love that. That requires you to crop a huge portion of those pixels and bring it down to what is a regular pixel camera. And then if you were to use the zoom on it, you're essentially smashing more pixels out of it to the point where I think I got down to like 20 megapixels at one point. It was like a panorama on the 60 millimeter equivalent crop. And I just sort of thought, if it was only JPEGs as a camera, you probably wouldn't care. But when you put it in Lightroom, there's something almost a bit like, you've got a safety net because you can recrop it.
Yep.
Like
got the whole,
it's not
the whole
actually,
sensor data.
Yeah, you're not really committing to anything. And I just sort of felt as though don't get me wrong, I've got some photos I could show you, insane quality. Like the actual photos are stupid. Like the quality out of it's insane. The dynamic range, the sharpness, the color that comes out of it is amazing. Exactly what you'd expect from Fuji. But I felt as though that all the things that are being advertised and things that people are talking about are actually novelty features that have existed in many other cameras for a long time. And for some reason now we're excited about them. And I just don't quite understand that.
Well, the thing too, and this is, brands do this with not just cameras, like it happens in almost every consumer product. And it's the little bells and whistles that they dangle in front of us to go, oh, an aspect ratio dial. But we've been able to change the aspect ratio on every Fuji camera. You just have to dive into the menus. The difference is that it's a neat little dial on the body. And again, Matt, I think it always comes down to the pros and cons, and I agree with them. I thought if I was a pro shooting with this, or if I was an enthusiast, like a high level enthusiast, and I'm doing a gig and this is the camera I've got, and if I didn't have it on the right aspect, like I would find some elements of this camera quite frustrating, but it also depends on what you're using it for. And what your level of mindfulness is going into using it. If you're just there for the joy of photography, which is something that I bang on about, I'm sorry. I like the fact that I had control over my aperture, shutter speed, ISO, and my aspect ratio. Not that I changed it that often, without having to go into the menus once.
I totally agree. Yeah. Do you think though that? But talk to me about this, right? So let's just, and this is where it's really a real battle in my head, because I actually completely agree. I would never use this camera from a commercial perspective, as in like if I was doing run and gun commercial stuff. It doesn't make any sense for a start. You're not going to use 250 megabyte files. Like that's just ridiculous. Yeah. But here's the thing. You talk about the mindfulness part of it, which I completely agree with, by the way. I think that you'll find most photographers have some form of therapy in the work that they do. Yeah. But actually, that's the magic that was lost for me, because there wasn't any therapy in it. Because what you could do is change the aspect ratio, but what actually, like behind the scenes, behind the facade, you knew that if you didn't quite get your composition right, you could recompose later. And I feel as though if the raw files, no pressure. And it's like almost what I want is if the raw files actually crop that data out completely, take out the megapixel. I don't care, you know, no one needs 100 megapixels. No one needs that, right? But if you actually had a raw file that committed you to that aspect ratio, but it gave you all the push and pull of what was in your frame, then I can kind of see the therapeutic part of it, because I'm like, I'm going out there and like it's making me commit. It's making me make a decision. It's making me think. I have to stop and I have to really think. Much like, you know, your Ilford camera, you couldn't go and if you screwed it up, it's totally rooted. You can't fix that. And there's something about, it's not pressure. It's almost like there's almost a joy in the fact that, well, if you stuffed it up, well, that's it. Like you can't try and fix it. Don't try and go back and do that. But I felt like this camera, from a raw perspective, what I want is the push and pull of the raw. I want the color of the raw, because that is something that genuinely, like, you want to put your own flair into. It's not about fixing things. It's about putting a flair into it. Yeah. But I felt as though the fact that you could recompose later meant, well, what's the bloody point of that dial? Because, like, I'll just sort of recompose. Like,
it almost reminded me, Matt, of those. I don't know if they brought out a smartphone. Well, I don't think it was that smart, but it was more of a concept, I think. And it had like about 8 lenses on the back. And it used computational photography, where you would take a photo and it would take a photo with all of those lenses, and you could later choose which elements were in focus, what bits fell out of focus.
The Lytra, I think.
Yeah, you remember that?
Lytro.
It was that. Yeah, that was, and it failed because we don't have it now, and cameras haven't adopted it. It's not like it was the birth of a new era of photography, because it didn't make sense that. You could go and take this photo and later in software choose which parts of the photo you wanted in focus and which parts you didn't.
Yes. And I think from a commercial photography, I was going to say, from a commercial photography perspective, which is ironic because that's not why I would use the camera, that's really useful, because if you stuff something up, you actually need to fix it. But when it comes to personal stuff, like the stuff I love, the things that, your passion is, I don't want to be able to fix it. If I got it right, I got it right. And if I didn't, it's like, too bad, Matt. You failed there, and like go out and have motivation to go again,
Yeah, and that's like a street photographer's approach. It's like that moment in time and space is gone, move on.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do about that photo.
Can I offer some perspective, Matt, on maybe your thoughts? Is I think you might be, I think there's like there's levels to this photography thing, and you might be at a level where that commitment pushes you and excites you. But even though this camera is pitched at people with quite a lot of experience in photography and quite deep pockets, I would say, being $10,000 camera, a lot of those people don't have your experience and potentially don't need the push that you need for that commitment. So for them, that in-camera crop is enough of a push, even though they've got the safety net of the RAW. And maybe that, so you need that. And I feel you on what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I think if you haven't literally delivered 100,000 photos to clients, or, obviously if you're a landscape photographer or something, not that many, but, depending on your chosen skill, if you haven't delivered thousands and thousands of photos to paying clients, just literally choosing that switch might be enough to push your creativity and think, oh, now I'm shooting in this panoramic mode. So
that's what they're hoping for.
But I'm totally up for the don't get me wrong, I'm up for the crop. I just think it's the lack of it's almost like it's kind of like a pointless part of the photo in a way. And I totally understand what you're saying. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking for everyone. I get that there are people out there who desperately would like this stuff. And I think that's really important to recognize. I just think that when you start looking at the price tag, which is $8,000 or more, I think it's like $8,500, you should be at that point talking to a group of people who are either experienced, because to spend that much money, you should be experienced. If you're spending that much money just because you've got the money, then like, I'm not really talking to you for the same reasons. I'm like, nothing against it, but at the same time, you're kind of jumping into the very, very high end of something. And I feel like if you're going to jump into the high end of something, that should come with all of the commitment of jumping into the high end of it. I feel as though it's like, if you're going to buy this camera, you're probably someone who is experienced. Otherwise, why not the X100 amazing option that's completely almost the same in a lot of ways. But it's the baby brother. It's still an expensive camera. It's still a great quality camera. It's got all the things, almost all the things anyway. But the moment you step up to that level, you're kind of talking about people who shoot, the Leica Qs and stuff like that. And I feel as though in my world, my experience of running workshops, I see people who have a Leica Q are people who are really bloody good at what they do, or they've got a lot of money and they've just walked in and gone, what's the best camera I can buy? And
which one are you, Justin?
I'll leave that. I'll leave it up to the chat to decide. I don't need to weigh in on that one. But I think you're.
There's not always a lot of commitment. Like there's not the people who have the money part, not the passion and the experience. They tend to not really have a commitment to caring too much about what the photo looks like anyway. They're kind of like, oh, I've got this camera, and often it doesn't actually get used that much. It's the people who've got the passion and the knowledge that really get the most out of those cameras. And much like what we've already seen with Greg, he's got a $60 camera he's played with today and got some cracking shots. That's almost
I'm
like
delighted by it. Like, I feel great about the day. Like, this $60 camera could do that to me. The thing I think, Matt, just very quickly on the GFX, it's a contradiction of a camera. It really is. They've created basically like a big brother to an X100, but they've put 100 megapixels in it. And a lot of people's like, oh, why didn't they just go with the 50? I think Fuji are done with their 50 megapixel sensor. It doesn't make sense to them financially to produce two GFX sensors. They're better off sticking with the one, which is what they're doing, because this sensor has been in multiple GFXs now. It's the same sensor as the 100S Mark II, which you and I both got to test and play with. And that's the interesting thing, because the X100 also has the same sensor as this new GFX. Not sensor, sorry, the same processor. It's got the same processor. It's got it's got a faster lens. It's got IBIS. It's 40 megapixels. It's not. I feel like the 100, the X100 Mark VI is more than enough for the type of camera it is. The GFX takes it almost to a ludicrous level. Sorry, Matt.
Can I share my screen for a second and just show you where I'm coming from? I'll see whether this is going to work. Hold on, it's going to ask me to do system preferences and stuff. Wait a second.
We'll figure it out. Hang on, let me just see what comments. There's a lot of comments coming in from Bruce and Nev. Nev was actually messaging me today about the Q3 and the GFX100 and stuff. Bruce says Justin likes that red dot. Yeah, I mean, the red dot's fun. I like it.
I got a bit excited when I walked past the Leica cabinet today in the store. Had a little peek.
It's not going to let me. It's asking me to restart the whole program, so I won't hold everyone up with it. But I'll give you an example here, right? So, like, I shoot a lot of stuff, and I'd like to think that I'm relatively experienced in a range of genres.
You've got a reputation. Let's leave it at that.
The thing that I look at here, which really frustrates me, is that I took some shots of some scenes that I found the panoramic sort of version. I found that really inspiring because it actually lets you shoot scenes you wouldn't shoot in a 4:6 or a 3:4 or 4:3 aspect ratio, right? Yeah. Like long skinny scenes, especially street scenes. I actually did a trip up to Benalla last week, or this week. I don't even know what week it is, but last week I think it was. I went up to Benalla, because it's Monday, right? So I went up to Benalla last week, and on the way, I actually left 4 hours early for my shoot to take some shots as the sun rose and stuff on like these small towns. And I got some really cool, small towns under like the two street lights of the small town kind of thing.
Yep.
But what was really frustrating is because it's an amazing sensor, it shoots really well at high ISOs. It's got great dynamic range. It is brilliant in so many ways. But when you pull the IBIS out of it at 102 megapixels, there is literally a zero tolerance for anything at all. And so I found that I could hand hold this camera comfortably to get like proper sharp, not just it's in focus and looks kind of sharp, but it was worth shooting 102 megapixels for sharp. I could get as slow as 1/60th of a second.
Yep.
Now, when it's paired with an f4 lens, yeah, f4 is pretty good, but not amazing. For a wide lens, it's actually pretty slow. What ends up happening is you inevitably end up shooting at like 8,000 ISO because in dark scenes, you just can't get the light from either one of those settings. And so what I found was that a lot of my shots were right up at the very high ISOs, which does look amazing. But it looks amazing for a camera at that ISO. But if I could shoot a camera that had IBIS and I could shoot, 3 stops slower, for instance, the ISO wouldn't have to be that high in the first place. So the actual comparable image quality is probably the same. And I found that to be really, really frustrating, was that for all these benefits we've got, amazing sensor, stupid sharp lens, but to take advantage of those two things, you have to have crazy, crazy fast shutter speeds, relatively speaking. I even did some street photography. I took it into the city on Saturday afternoon and Saturday night. I had 2 workshops and I had about an hour in between. And I tried to do, I love the style of shooting at 1/8 of a second, shutter priority mode, handheld, street scene. So you get that little bit of people movement with a one person still, or, a still subject. Could you hold it for 1/8 of a second? Absolutely not. Like, I took hundreds of photos and not a single one of them turned out to be sharp. I couldn't do a panning shot because it had no give whatsoever. I took some night shots on a tripod, and even then I had one of the night shots actually turn out to be usable. And that was on a tripod. And that was because the wind vibration of my tripod was too much to handle at 102 megapixels. So I think that what I find frustrating is that we've got so much amazing tech, and I feel like the pressure to make it into a smaller camera has almost made them sacrifice something that we take for granted these days. Like, every camera, maybe except for the one you bought today, has amazing IBIS, and we shoot to IBIS now. Like, we've almost all so used to it. We assume there's an element of that in your camera. The moment it's switched off, you're like, oh my God, I'm rooted. And it kind of goes back to like what Bruce said before. He asked if I bought an FX6, and I was like, that is actually on my shopping list, except it's got no IBIS, and I do a lot of run and gun. So the FX3 would make way more sense, even knowing it's not, got all the other bells and whistles. So,
Matt, who do you think the camera is actually for? Putting aside,
I think the camera.
Putting aside cost, let's put aside cost.
Yeah, I think that. I hate to say it because I really love the Fuji system and I love their GFX. Like, I would much quicker buy a GFX and a lens, but this particular camera, I feel in my heart of hearts, is for people who are fanboys or fangirls who need to have the latest tech. And I feel like what's going to happen with all the feedback, because I've not read any review that doesn't have a similar vein to it. I think the GFX100RF Mark II is going to be incredible. I think that it's going to be the public pressure on this is going to make them put IBIS in it, because you can't shoot 102 megapixels without it. It just doesn't make any sense at all. It's so unforgiving that it's almost like, why give us the ability to recrop a shot for forgiveness when you can't get a shot sharp in the first place if it's in any remotely difficult situation? I just feel like
go on, Justin, and then I've got a question.
Just quickly, when we shifted to the D850s, which were DSLRs, no IBIS, no IBIS in those, no IBIS. We consciously ended up shooting our minimum, unless we were super steady and had something planned and we really been careful. Our minimum shutter speed was 1/320th. We know. If we're sort of moving around doing something on a commercial job or something like that, at a 3/20th, we can get a 45 megapixel file sharp with a non-stabilized lens, because we're shooting some with primes and stuff like that didn't have optical image stabilization. And when I moved from like a D5 or D4 or whatever it was, to a D850, it was, and D750s and stuff. We consciously, we would often shoot at maybe 250th or 200th. It was like, no, we're at a 3/20th now. And that was on, a 45 megapixel sensor. And I can only imagine that being closer to 400, 500 for what you're talking about, which is critical sharpness, which is what you want if you're buying a 100 megapixel sensor. I heard you say that specifically, like you can get it sharp enough, like we can accept less sharpness, but why bother doing that on a 100 megapixel sensor? Like you say, then you might as well just get the X100.
What's the point?
What's the point?
Yeah, and that was the frustrating thing to me, is with like it almost felt like all of the novel new features, there was an element in my brain that went, yeah, that's amazing, but because of this setback, what's the point? Like, why bother having a medium format camera if you can't get, if it's on an f4 lens, it's got the equivalent depth of field of like an f2.8 or f3.2 full frame. If you made an f2.8 medium format, I'd be like, cool, that's got an impressively shallow depth of field. Now, pair that with a 28mm lens, super wide, realistically, you don't get much depth of field out of a 28mm lens, regardless of its aperture. So at f4, it's incredibly hard to blur a background even. Whilst you might have these kind of crops, it's like you're not really getting that benefit. And I just threw me, you know?
Yeah, like I said, it is a contradiction, you know. And the other thing, I said, you know, who's it for, take price out. But when you bring price back into it, it's, you know, there's a little confusion, because, you know, the GFX100RF is 8800 from Fujifilm. Okay, I'm sure you can get it cheaper at other places. I'm just using Fujifilm's site for price reference. The 100S Mark II, which has the same sensor and processor but it's interchangeable, is currently $100 less.
Yeah.
So it makes it a very tricky purchasing decision. I can go with this, the RF fixed lens. I got all that glorious sensor, but I can't actually put it. I can't use it as much as it could actually be used. Yeah. But exactly I can get the 100S Mark II, and I'm going to have to spend another $2,000 to $3,000 just to get a pancake, just to get a wide prime. But it's going to be able to do so much more because it has IBIS, for one. So it's an interesting proposition that Fujifilm have made, because, you know, on the one hand, it's like, yes, it's the big brother of the 100 Mark VI, the X series camera. You know, it's 3 times the price at the moment. Who's actually going to buy this now that all the sort of dust is settling, and we're seeing that, you know, real world scenarios, like the camera for me, when I used it, well, it works perfectly fine because I usually shoot f8. I generally don't do street at night. You know, I'm a street photographer. I made that very clear in my review. You know, this is how I use it. I didn't say I shoot birds. I didn't say I shoot weddings, because I don't. And that's not what I would use this camera for anyway.
And I can't see anyone, to be honest, I can't see anyone shooting a wedding with it, because probably more so because there are some genuine limitations around even just the zoom level on it. And I don't think it's trying to be a wedding photography camera. So anyone who compares to a wedding photographer, I think they're a bit crazy. But
the other thing too is, you know, you talked about the GFX100RF Mark II, and it makes me wonder, did they throw this one out there to see how it would stick? And if it sticks, that then they can actually go, well, because think about it, everyone's going, oh, well, I wish it had IBIS, then I would definitely get it. I wish it had a 2.8 lens, I would definitely get it. And then if they go and bring out a Mark II in 2 years or 18 months that has those things, all those people that park that purchase are going to jump on it, even if it's not a sensible decision.
But I don't know. I think that I hear what you're saying, but I don't think a brand can afford to bring out a camera just to test the water. Like, that's a lot.
No, I get that. Like, I think they wanted to sell. But
I think what's happened is that you've got a situation where the RX100 and all its predecessors are so popular that you go, well, what would make all those people jump? You go, we'll make a medium format. That'd be like, it is literally the coolest camera on the planet right now. Like, it is the coolest camera.
Yeah, I love it.
The problem is that, unfortunately, you know, I hate to say this, but people who are cool tend to not have the $8,500 budget for the cool thing. I mean, this is like the ultimate. If you were a hipster right now and you could rock that, you'd be the coolest hipster ever. But hipsters typically don't have $8,500 to spend on a camera. So that's where it throws me. I've just sent you something, Greg. I don't know if you got your text messages there, but I couldn't share my screen. But this is what I wanted to show you guys before.
Let's try and bring it up somehow.
Yeah, I thought this was just a really glaring example of what I'm sort of talking about here, where you've got this incredible sensor, and my experience, remember, is looking at this as a crop photo. So I'm not looking at it as the wide, but then I pulled it into Lightroom. I've done a screenshot for Greg of a screenshot of how I shot it, but then also when I've gone into crop to see what the actual frame looks like. And the reason I wanted to show this was because I wanted to give you the example here of how bloody capable this camera is. Like color-wise, it's insane. And I'm just going to show you that the time I cropped it from 100 megapixels down to this panoramic image, which was using the full zoom, digital teleconverter, and using the panorama crop, it's actually 19.6 megapixels, which in photography land, when you're talking about starting at 100, that's 80% of that quality is being cropped out. And whilst it produces amazing color and sharpness and all that, and there's no doubt you zoom in 100%, it still looks stupidly good. But that's what I saw in the shot, right? That's the frame that I shot. But going back into Lightroom and hitting crop, that's what I'm seeing. So I don't know, that just throws me, because I'm kind of like, if I'd spent $8,000 or $8,500, that I can't help but think that would maybe disappoint me a little bit.
So yeah, which basically means like you had a mind. Essentially, you needed a different lens on a GFX like body, and if you could have at least had that framed width-wise correctly, and then just cropped the top and bottom, you would have been much more satisfied. Like, hey, it's the full width of the sensor, perfect. I'm happy with that. But you're looking at it and you're like, man, this is basic. Like, you could have whipped out any.
It feels haphazard, And I feel as though that's the disappointment here, is that like 28 millimeters is actually very, very wide for a lot of applications, which means that I feel like if you're doing anything to do with portraiture, as an example, you're not shooting 28 mil. That's ridiculous. People look stupid. They've got big bobbly heads. So therefore, straight off the bat, you're forced to sacrifice a huge portion of what you've paid for. It's like having, an insurance policy where you never claim, you never will. Like you're insured for skydiving, but you've never been skydiving before. Like, I sort of feel like even if this started off as like a 35 mil sensor, at least 35 mil, I think, is kind of zoomed enough or cropped enough, or narrow enough, I should say, that for a lot of applications, 35, you can get away with portraiture. You can get away with a lot of landscapes. You can get away with a lot of genres at 35. 28, that little bit wider, it's not shockingly different, but it's enough that you know that it's not applicable to a huge handful of genres. And I get it.
It starts to apply unnecessary restrictions, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I get that. Like, you go to 35 and all of a sudden, well, you can't go wider, so you're really stuffed if you want to do something wider. At least at 28, you can go more cropped. But if you're always, or if you find that 90% of the time you are going to be on some form of crop, again, I question, well, why are you investing so much money in such a high-end sensor? When it comes to all the other limitations, like need a fast shutter, it's an f4. I feel like there's too many things that sit in that cons column for me to go.
Yeah.
Like, if it didn't cost $8,000, if it cost $5,000, I'd actually probably go, hey, this is a really compelling unit, because for $5,000, you can't buy a sensor like that and a lens that's going to resolve it. You can't get anywhere near that. When you start talking about 8,000, you are, as you say, you're starting to talk about the territory where you could actually almost buy a GFX camera with a lens, and it might cost you an extra $1,000, but at least you've got choices.
Well, that was the other question that I raised with some people who were saying, "Oh, but it needs to have a 2.8," and yes, it would be amazing if it did, and it needs to have IBIS, and yes, it would be amazing if it did, but it would also be an extra $3,000.
Yeah. But I sort of think
so that whole camp would then jump to, oh, well, who's it for? It's ridiculously expensive. I might as well buy a GFX100S Mark II.
But yeah,
don't you think there's a line? Don't you think there's a line though where you kind of go, you're the sort of person who's going to spend $10,000 or you're not? Like,
no, I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that black and white. I don't think it's that binary.
Yeah, I reckon.
No,
I
don't
reckon
think
if I look back to my workshops, I reckon I've got people who they're like, this is my passion and I've got money and money's not a problem. So therefore,
there's definitely those people. I mean, this podcast is sponsored by one of them. But, you know, I mean, if this camera was in the 7,000 category, then Junior there with his peach fuzz would currently be the owner of the GFX100RF.
No, actually, I said that to you, Greg, when I was reading the rumors sites. But then once I saw the specs and I really dug into it, this is the thing, and it's for these reasons that ultimately, if I was weighing this up compared to the Leica Q3, which is a legitimate competitor to this camera, like it's a fixed lens, 28 mil.
60
the
megapixel.
Leica's 60 megapixel, which is not it's not you know, it's a lot of megapixels still. It's not 100 medium format, but it's still pretty good. It offers like the ability to go to 1.7 and it be tack sharp, and it's got optical image stabilization in it. I handheld the thing all the time at a 30th or lower.
But how much is it just
for night shot? It's 11
brand new.
grand. It's
but that's
grand brand new. It's crazy.
That sort of proves to me. That proves to me though that there's a market there that says whether it's 8,000 or 11,000, if you're going to spend that much money, that becomes. I don't want to say it's a rounding error because I don't want to. I know that sounds really, you know, dismissive, but I do think that. Like, I know when I look at cameras, and I know that I'm a professional and all yada, 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 but I think that when I look at my students as well, I mean, I've had 4,500 people come through my workshops, and I see the cameras that come through. You have people who are going, I don't care what the lens costs. If it's the best lens and I'm going to improve, like I'm retired or I'm got money or whatever. Like, photography is a luxury sport to a large degree. Like, let's not forget that whilst you can get away with it cheap, on the whole, photography is a bit of a luxury.
Come on.
I think that people do have. But people do have like this
nothing luxurious here. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
I think if you put two cameras, if you put a Leica Q3 at $10,000 and a Leica Q2 at $8,000, people would buy the Leica Q3 at $10,000 because well, it's only an extra $2,000 and I'm already spending $8,000, so 10's not that. It's already a dent. I already had to ask the wife whether I could spend it, so therefore I'm in trouble regardless. You know, whereas. That's the thing that throws me. It's got to be in the cheaper category where it's like, cool, this is an aspirational camera for someone who wants to just try, you know, get into this like big person, you know, like grown-up camera space. Or it's got to be a camera that's got enough flexibility that it can actually handle all the situations. Because here's the thing, you said before, like the great thing about this reframing and the recropping and stuff was that it doesn't make you commit, so therefore it's got some flexibility. It can do that. You're saying that, you know, with the wide angle lens, that makes sense because, you know, you can crop in, but you can't crop out. That makes sense. But then throw me with the F4 because it's like, well, at F4, you almost can't get a shallow depth of field. So it's like it actually eliminates a whole bunch of creative options before it even gets off the bat.
But you know, and when this first came out, and I was speaking to a friend of mine because you know, being in the Fuji group, you know, and like I think we've got over 5,500 members now, and there's a whole, and Nev's in the group as well, and you know, there's a lot of Fuji photographers who are pros or high level enthusiasts, and they've got two Fuji X series flagship bodies, whether it be XT5 or the XH2S. I mean, the XH2S is almost $4,000 on its own, and it's only I can't remember what the sensor is now. It's not massive. Anyway, and they buy an X100 Mark VI as their weekender, as their everyday carry, as their hobby. And when I first started hearing about this and started thinking about the review for this, it felt like, to me, given my experience with that, with other photographers in the Fuji ecosystem, that this was a camera for people like Nev Clark, our good friend, who already has either one or two pro level GFXs, and they just want a weekender, but they love the GFX experience. They love the sensor. They love the ecosystem, the color, the size. It works for them. And this is just their throw in their bag everyday camera. And yes, it's an $8,500 everyday carry camera. But if you already have a $30,000 or $40,000 GFX kit, well, then that isn't a lot.
And that's what I'm saying. If you asked for an extra 11, it'd be in the same category. It'd still be like, well, I love my 40,000 kit. And so I don't know. That's why I think it's a bit weird because it sits in it sits in this middle void where, as you say, it almost seems like it's testing the water, but it doesn't.
Well, maybe they're trying to create maybe they're trying to convince us that this is a new space.
I don't know. I think what's happened is that I think personally, the way I would see this is that IBIS is not just expensive, but IBIS actually takes up a lot of space.
Yeah.
You know, it's a whole mechanism in there. And I think that an f2.8 lens takes a lot of space. Yeah. So like, I don't know about you, but when I unpacked it out of the box, I was like, wow, this is bloody tiny. And then I put the lens hood thing on and then the filter adapter thing. And I'm like, it's still very small for what it is, but it's actually a lot larger. And I said to a friend of mine who I've been talking to all week about this, hi, Nick, hope your face is feeling all right. Nick, actually, I should just throw it out. Anyone who knows Nick from BFOP, send him a text message, send your loves and prayers and thoughts. He had a little whoopsie on his scooter this week and ended up in hospital with a broken face and a broken leg.
Jesus, Nick.
I know, he did it in the most manly way possible. But anyway, I've been talking about this a lot this week and kind of going, you've got this camera that's really looking small and you can put on paper that it weighs this much and it's this size and it's not that much bigger. But I think in reality, if you're the sort of person who loves the GFX experience, it was 25% bigger and 25% heavier, but it actually had those few key things. An f2.8 lens and IBIS, you'd just be like, it could be twice as heavy, twice as big, or maybe not twice as big, but twice as heavy and twice as expensive. And suddenly it's just like, holy crap, this has got all the things. This is like my golden camera. But the moment there's a shadow of a doubt about one of those things, suddenly it looks expensive for what it is. And I know it's probably psychological, but I would, as I said, like, I mean, I don't even like gear these days. I hardly buy gear unless I absolutely desperately need it or something really, really unique comes out. But if this had those two things, I'd have one already. I probably wouldn't have sent it on to the next person. I would have sent them a check for it. It just didn't feel like
I was the same.
There, you know?
Yeah. I mean, given what I shoot, Matt, it felt perfect for me.
Yeah.
Because there's no pressure. There's, and I don't need a fast aperture lens. Sure, it's nice every now and then, but for what I would use that camera for, which is purely as my workhorse street camera, which I know doesn't make sense to spend that much money on a street camera, but plenty of people do. It makes perfect sense. But that's a very niche genre.
Yeah. And I just sort of go, like, if that didn't exist, would the X100 would that have filled the void? And I kind of feel like the answer is yes.
Yeah, absolutely would. Yeah.
So the fact that it exists is why we want to buy it, and that's probably not a good enough reason to buy it.
Yeah. Well,
do you guys remember? Do you guys remember when?
What's it? I'm not going to show you. Hold on. Let me.
What is that?
I saw there's a couple of people who said in the chat, they were saying poor Nick, and I just thought I'd just quickly try and.
Just a white.
Overexposed.
Oh shit!
Oh, there it is. Oh my gosh.
Nick.
Oh no.
No, hold on.
Oh no, mate. Well, it's maybe an improvement. Nick, we're sending you all of our love.
Oh no.
We hope you get better soon, mate.
Dear.
That was what I sent him when it happened.
You're such a good friend.
Oh no.
All right. Look, I think we've covered the GFX. Justin, you had a question or a point you wanted to make?
I was just very briefly going to just say, because we're talking about a camera that's just come out, and I want to preface this with, I love that Fujifilm made it. They've taken a swing, they've done something no one's done, and put a massive sensor in a tiny camera. Everyone's been screaming for another Sony, what's it called, RX1 or whatever.
RX1R.
Tiny camera, nice sharp prime on it. The Q series of Leicas have been super popular. The X100 has been super popular. So I think it's great that Fuji have gone, let's see what we can do. And they needed to do it, but whether or not it's something that it makes for most people is going to be up to the individual. And for me, it's not something that I'm running out to grab, even though it is very cool that they've made it. And I think, maybe those pano modes. I was walking around taking shots here and in Wilson's prom, and a lot of them I was cropping to like a panorama shot. And I was thinking, man, maybe, and I was shooting at 5.6 f8 most of the day because it was, it was daytime and stormy, moody weather and stuff like that on beaches. And I was okay, it would be cool right now, but then as soon as the light drops or whatever, you lose those benefits and you're stuck at f4. That being said,
the advantage is that you shot at 12,800 ISO. It's the equivalent of shooting at like 100 ISO on any other camera. But But I do agree. It's like it's got that. It's got its place, I think, and I think that's the important thing. It's not a bad camera. I just think that it's not as versatile.
What I think they're missing is, do you guys remember when Leica brought out the Q? Do you remember when the Q first come out and everyone was like, holy shit, it's the lens on that normally sells for about that same price. You know what I mean? That's how people were talking about it. They were like, oh, this lens is so sharp. It's so good. And if you had to buy that lens for an M camera, it would cost about the same amount of money or maybe more or whatever. So it had that on its side, which obviously Leica's pricing is completely different to Fujifilm's and they couldn't do that. But like you say, if it had one of their, like if it had an iconic lens built into it where people had already, well, they were like, that's a $7,000 lens. I can get the whole thing for 10 or 11 or whatever. That might have been a different prospect to people, but the lens isn't something they already make, and it's not. Yeah, it's not
a star performer, is it? I think the two things that it has is its compact form and its sensor size, and there is some versatility to it, but you've got to fight it to get it.
So what about this though? Like, how do you feel about this as an idea? Because I totally agree that this is a bit of it's a swing. I don't know whether it's a miss yet, but it's a swing, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that what's going to happen is that, I mean, if you look back, the first person I think or the first camera brand to really release something of note in this space was probably Sony when they released the RX1. Remember that? Full frame 35mm sensor. It actually had incredible focus tracking and image quality was amazing and had all these things, but it was like $5,000 or $4,500. And everyone was like, oh, it's amazing, but it's $4,000. And they were scoffing at that price. If you go onto eBay at the moment, you can buy one of them. They're out of production, but you can buy one for like $6,000 on eBay. Yeah. And I feel as though this space there's been toes dipped in this space before. Sony were the first, I think, to do it. I mean, Leica may have been first, I don't know. But Leica's kind of they're playing a different game. They're in a different ballpark. You know, Leica shooters are Leica shooters. But I feel like Sony did it. I don't know that it worked. I think if Sony did it today, which I suspect they're about to do it in the next couple of years, they're going to bring out their full frame RX1 Mark II, because the success of all these other fixed lens cameras is so high. The problem with this is that Sony's going to throw in not just the flexibility to crop and some of those nice things. Sony's going to chuck in all the stupid technology that they've got. I hate to say it, Sony are the leaders of ridiculousness when it comes to like, oh, we could just do that. You know, like, don't get me wrong, love Canon cameras, love Nikon cameras, love Fuji cameras, but there is something where Sony, and I actually don't even really love Sony that much as a brand, but in their cameras, the stupid things they manage to cram into the bodies of those cameras, I just go, what the hell? At the size they manufacture those, imagine what they can do with their fixed lens full frame camera now. And if this proves to be popular, what's going to happen is Sony's going to come in and they're going to wipe everyone off the table with it, because they're going to put everything they got into like this, all the stuff we're talking about. And that's probably what makes me a bit nervous about this camera, is that I feel as though because it's the only one out there outside of a Leica, it seems really exciting. But the moment everyone else starts doing it with the other side of their technology, the fast focus, the eye tracking, the things that make it seamless, the things where you don't have to think about it and you can just enjoy it for the experience of being a photographer, but it still gets it right, that's when I'm nervous, because people won't tolerate not being able to shoot below a 30th of a second. I mean, they're not going to tolerate not having depth of field. They're not going to tolerate a lot of these things because there's another option. And at the moment, there's no other option. So it seems like a better one. But that won't last long, because if it's popular, everyone's going to jump on board, you know?
Yeah. Well,
I feel really negative saying this, by the way. I feel really bad. I'm sorry, Fuji. I actually love GFX, but I'm going to buy the big GFX with all the lenses. You'll get a lot more money from me rather than the one little one.
Look, and it comes back to what, and I said this last week, Matt, it comes back to how I settled a lot of the debates that were happening in different groups that I'm in. Well, maybe this camera is not for you. Maybe it wasn't made for you, and we don't really know fully who it was made for, because they're being a little bit coy, because they're just hoping everyone will latch on. They don't want to come out and say this is the ultimate camera for enthusiasts, because then they'll isolate the pros and the entry levels. I think they want to see. I think this is the space that we all need to watch. Obviously, Fuji will be watching it very closely, but like I said, sometimes I come back to, well, okay, but just maybe it's not for you. And that's cool. There's plenty of other cameras out there. And, you know, some of the people who were putting out the loudest arguments, like I said, already had a couple of GFX cameras. They were already well and truly covered. You know, they don't really need this camera, but they were arguing the loudest. Not Nev, never Nev. But on that note, we are running over, and I think this is a really important. Yeah, Matt looks exhausted. You look shit.
I'll get no sleep tonight. I'm off at Phillip Island at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. So
you've got nothing to do. Justin looks a bit tired. Looks like he's had a touch of sun today.
It's been pissing down rain here.
Oh, really?
We've had 50 mils today. We've been running around in the rain. I was taking photos in the rain. I've got some stuff. We'll look at it next week. Some photos I was taking out in the rain. I had a great time just taking photos of like stuff that's washed up on the beach and shit. I was doing exactly what Bruce said this camera was made for. It was made for Bob. Bruce says the GFX100 was made for Bob, Uncle Bob. If anyone knows who that is. If you've been a wedding photographer, you know who Uncle Bob is.
Right.
Matt.
Well, Justin wanders around being a white woman of Instagram, taking photos of flowers and and driftwood.
It was actually dead octopi, octopuses.
Oh, really?
Octopi?
Octopi.
Still Instagram worthy. Octopi.
Or octopus.
That's sad. Octopus. Why were they dead ones?
They got washed up on the beach. It's fine.
Why didn't they
it's
swim
the circle
back?
of life. I think there was a storm. They pushed them up.
Sad.
You know, it happens.
All right.
Food for something else.
Well, speaking of things coming to an end, I think it is time. Forgive me for that sloppy segue, but I just want to thank Matt for joining us tonight. It was very last minute. We both forgot, and then we both last minute remembered. But Matt, always a pleasure to talk to you. We were going to cover BFOP. We're going to get you back for that, I think, in a couple of weeks anyway. We want to hear more about BFOP. We want to hear more about what you're...
Can I put one thing in there?
Yeah. What do you got? What's happening?
So I'm not going to go into it, right? So BFOP, that's a long way away. But we do have a special event coming up on May 10th for anyone who has been to BFOP and likes the vibe of BFOP. Nick and I have had a couple of bottles of wine and planned a different event, which is like a micro event leading into the Camera House 40th birthday party. But there are tickets available. You got to go onto the Facebook, I think, to get them. You can get the link through the site. But anyway, I think about like the stupidest stuff that we do, and then imagine us going, how can we do it in half a day?
Okay.
Yeah. Good.
So, depressing.
Because I think a lot of people were calling for that.
Well, they were
just anecdotal discussions around BFOP. Oh, I wish we could do something in the middle of the year.
And here we are.
I wish there was other dates, and here we are.
So tell me, I've got questions. Where is this happening?
So it starts in the city. We are being a little bit coy about the details, and that's not because we don't have anything planned.
This is the city. This is the city of Melbourne, correct?
Melbourne, yeah. So we have it planned. We start in the city. The whole idea is Camera House is having their 40th birthday party out at Croydon. So we start in the city. We have an art thing to start with. So we're doing an artsy activity, and then that's followed by a very fun activity, and then some more photography, hands-on artsy activity, and then we go out with a bang, and we end up at Croydon. So
sounds like a camera crawl.
It is. Look, I'll be honest with you. It is basically a camera crawl. Yeah, we've been coy on the details of this because it's the sort of thing that it needs to be a surprise. But we have got so much planned. We have spent double the budget that we were supposed to, and now we just need people to actually come. So I think we've got about 55 people at the moment. We've got about 100 tickets on offer all up. I know we're still a little way out, but we're going to lock our numbers in soon because we've got to actually book in a lot of these experiences that we're doing. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll drop some links.
Wait. I got more questions. How much does it cost?
It's $70. A bargain. I mean, it's only $10 more expensive than an Ilford camera.
Do you have to have been to BFOP to be able to go, or can anyone go? Is this
I can't go now. I spent my last $60.
Anyone can go. Absolutely anyone can go. But if you've been to BFOP before, you'll get the vibe and you'll understand what's going on. If you haven't been to BFOP before, you have to go in with a very open mind.
Yep. Yeah, it could be pretty wild.
BFOP, just for the uninitiated, BFOP is very... And I said this to Matt the last night at BFOP. I said, this has been magical. And I think it is. I think there's a little bit of magic involved in BFOP.
Yeah, I think so.
Most definitely.
Greg and I will talk about it, but if Greg's available and if I'm available, we might snag ourselves a couple of tickets.
Well, I think you should just come down. You should just come down and join us. You can be some of our hosts. We're getting our instructors to be hosts.
We'll figure it.
We'll work out something.
We can buy some.
And there's a cocktail party at the end, which is nice.
Oh, I can be the designated driver.
Yeah, perfect.
Because Justin doesn't like it.
You don't have a car.
No, but you do. I can drive the van.
Okay. We can get public transport. All right. Is there anything else that you need to tell us about Matt before we go?
Yeah, that's coming up for you. Anything that's you. What have you got on? Workshops?
Mate, I've got workshops coming out the wazoo. I think I've got workshops have booked. I've got dates up till June. I put up the other day. I've got trips to South Africa that you can join me next November is the next availability. I think.
Wow.
I've got lots of stuff on. I'm always doing stuff. You know what it's like. Probably the biggest plug that I'll do though is if you are interested, if you're someone who's getting into Lightroom, I've got a beginner's Lightroom course that's on my website now. It's 5.5 hours. It's really a detailed insight into it all. You can go and check it out. But no, look. Otherwise, I'm always doing everything. So jump on there and see what's going on. I've got the calendar up.
Hang on. The chat's asking for the event details. So you're saying the only place to find the details is in the BFOP Facebook
Well,
group?
it was.
Right?
It's literally as we speak. Okay, so I've just put it on the homepage of BFOP as we speak because I realized as I was saying that how ridiculous that is. So now if you go onto the BFOP Australia.com website, you'll see there's a button that says BFOP special event May 10. You click on that, it'll take you to the special event.
Cool.
There you go. Look at that.
Put it in the comments, yeah?
I'm very excited, yeah.
Yeah, we'll track it down. We'll put it in the description.
Yeah.
I'm trying to put it in the chat, but
I can't. I'm not in the chat, so it asked me to log in, and I don't know my passwords, and it's too late at night.
Don't stress. We'll get the details. We'll put it in the description for anyone that's interested. There we go. It's in the chat now. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah, check that out because if you haven't been to BFOP and you've always wanted to, or you've missed tickets, or the timing wasn't right, have a crack at this. It's a one-day event, and it's going to have a lot of.
Look at the photo in the product description, and that will give you some hints as to the things that may or may not be occurring.
Okay. All right. Well, look, we'll leave it at that. Matt, as always, such a pleasure to chat to you. There's so much more that we could go into, but we'll get you back on the show closer to BFOP.
Sounds good.
And we'll start talking about some bright festival of photography action. I'm tired too. Carrying that little Ilford around all day, it's really worn me out. But look,
wow, that's a massive van all of a sudden.
I thought I'd just give you guys a view. You should see this setup I've got going on here. I've got the Roadcaster and stuff. I've got the full podcast setup. I want to do a test and see if it worked. It mostly worked.
Yeah, it's been pretty good.
Elon
Have you kicked her out? Yeah. Did you kick her out?
Huh?
Did you kick Yelena out?
She's up there. That's the bed up there.
Yeah, she's in the back writing comments.
Yeah, she's up there. I'm down here. I got the Roadcaster down here. See, look at that. I got the full deck.
Oh, Jesus.
We're good to go. That's why it's got all the good sounds. But yeah, before we go, I just want to shout the chat out because they're going crazy tonight. We've missed the last 600 messages that you guys have put in there. I'm glad they've figured a few things out. They figured out that Nev is not buying. Nev's not buying the GFX100RF. Bruce says, good show, everyone. Have a good evening. I'll go back to not being in a camera store. Sorry, Bruce. I don't know what was wrong with my brain. I'm an idiot. Philip Johnson says, thanks, Matt, Justin, and the Ilford ambassador, Greg. Yeah, that's right. Tim, it's in the thing. Tim says, thanks and good night, everyone. Rick Nelson, who is from a camera store, says, great show, as always. Matt, Greg, and Justin. And yeah, there's a million others. Thanks, guys. Awesome.
I think you should cut back to the fact that they said good night about an hour ago, but
they did.
Yeah, they're all gone. It's just us now. So, I want to make it seem like we still had listeners. Anyway, we had fun. It was a great show.
On that note, thanks once again, Matt. Justin, great that you could join us from wherever the hell you are. And look, you've been watching and listening to the Camera Life podcast, the Random Photography Show, Open Mic Night. How's that for a title? With Yelena in the background. Hey, Yelena. She can't hear me.
No. Greg says hi.
Wave.
Never mind. She's listening to the show delayed.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, it's the 31st of March, and it's April Fool's tomorrow, so beware.
Oh, amazing.
Oh,
beware.
There's going to be pranks.
That one.
But look, we'll let everyone go now. Have a great night, everyone. Be safe. Get out and chase the light, and we'll see you on Thursday morning.
Yep.
9 a.m.
Good night, everyone.
Australian Eastern
Thanks
time.
so much,
Good
Matt.
night, everyone.
And see you on the 10th, Paul. Maybe, hopefully.
You ready, Jay?
Going crazy.